Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the podcast. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to grow our channel, and as we continue on with the podcast, we want to start new forms of content. We want to start posting our work here on YouTube. So if you want to see some of that and continue supporting the podcast, please subscribe. Enjoy the episode. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Exordia Creative Podcast. Guys, we still don't have Bubbly in the office, but that is being fixed as we speak right now. Today, we're drinking a Bayside Orchard Cherry Lager. Happy Monday.
Close enough. It's carbonated. It's cherry. Let's get into it.
Smells like Delhaven's.
Give us a little connoisseur tasting review. What kind of notes do you detect?
See, what I like about this beer is that the cherry is really... I used to be really into craft beer, by the way.
Right.
For those of you that don't know, I was into craft beer. Check out Tasty Hops on Instagram if it still exists. When I was in university, I used to drink a lot of craft beer. Anyway, so this beer is really nice because the cherry is actually subtle. Like, it's not like, hey, I'm a cherry beer. It's like you get a... It's not necessarily sweet. It's tart. If I had to give it it's like a tart flavor. But no, this one's really good. It tastes pretty fresh too. So
is that a summer exclusive? Can you not buy that 6 months from now?
I don't think you can. I think it's only in the summer.
Get it while it's here.
Get it while it's hot. So yeah, shout out to Bayside. Thanks for supporting the drink today. Jared, what's good?
You know.
You
told me that you're gonna get a new hairstyle.
Yeah, guys,
You're being a little mysterious about it.
I gotta give a rant, okay? If you're not on Chatham Rant and Rave, you might not know what that means, but I gotta give a rant. All right, I was at an establishment, not my typical place that I go to get my hair cut. I wanted to change my hairstyle. By the time I got in the chair, I was not letting this establishment cut my hair. The owner of this business was screaming at their clientele for what I could see as not being a big deal, and it was ridiculous. It went on for the entire duration of my haircut. So I said, I'm just going to get my regular cut, and I'm going to go see my boy.
That just sounds so ridiculous.
When he has some time. So, Pedro, I know you watch, I know you listen. I'm sorry I couldn't come to you. You're booked, you're busy, and that's good. So
walk us through it. So you sat down in the chair.
I sat down in the chair.
You haven't even got cut yet?
And immediately, this dude walks through and says, hey, just want to check to see how much longer the haircut's going to be. It's already, I think it was 5 minutes past when he was supposed to get his haircut.
Okay.
And he's like, can I know? And then the owner just went off on him. Bro, it's only been 5 minutes, blah, blah, blah. It was just really unprofessional, really sad to watch. Yeah. And the tension went on for the entire haircut. They were out in the parking lot screaming at each other the entire haircut.
That's insane.
And like you said, how long, the client comes first in client services. You can't just argue with people. At some point, you've got to have a... So
we're assuming that this guy had an appointment booked and it was late.
Yeah, by 5 minutes.
And that happens.
It does.
Yeah. I've never, I can't say that all my haircuts are right on time to the minute. It's a reasonable question. But yeah, I'm of the opinion that even if the client or the customer is dead wrong, and even if they're being obnoxious, you don't fight fire with fire.
No.
Worst case scenario, if they're being completely belligerent, you just say, I can't deal with you, or you're going to have to get your hair cut elsewhere or something like that. Yeah. But to come back and are you kidding me?
Yeah. They were screaming back and forth. And the place was full. There was people in there. And I think we were all just kind of ooh.
That's disgusting. Even if you're right, I'm not going to get behind you, degrading a customer.
No.
That's just so wrong on so many levels.
Yeah. So that was really unfortunate. And, I won't be going back there. So, Pedro, I'll be hitting you up soon. Hopefully you got some time. What else is going on? Dude, okay, we got to talk about the Hard 75.
Okay, just while we're on the topic, we'll come back to the Hard 75. What's the deal with the haircut? Because you've had that haircut forever. You've been saying it for a long time. I know in the past, you're like, I'm going to go completely bald. And I just kind of laughed at you. Yeah.
So I'm going to leave it ominous for the podcast listeners.
What are you going to come back with? So the way I see it is I personally am growing my hair out. It takes forever. You've already got quite short hair.
Yeah.
If you're going to come back and surprise us, that must mean you're staying pretty short.
Yeah, it's short. So my
wife... You
don't
have much more to go, though. You're pretty much buzzed on the side.
Yeah, I know. So it might actually take a little while for these styles, but Sarah was sending me, my wife, she sent me some stuff because I don't really know, nor do I really care. I'm just tired of my normal hairstyle. Yeah. I hate that when I don't do it, it doesn't look good. I can't just wake up and not wear a hat. It's time to end the champion hat.
That's a big
season.
Statement.
Okay.
So you got to go shorter.
So here we go. So just take a look at some of those. I'm just showing Jared a couple of the styles on my phone right now, and you guys will see them when it actually happens. But it is different though, right?
I hate to burst your bubble. I've had that. It's not like you don't get bedhead. You still get it.
Yeah, but it's anyway.
A little bit of water in your hand is enough.
Yeah. Because the issue with my hair is that I have a double cowlick in the front and then a double crown. Like, bro, like this is the shortest I can go with this style without, but it still doesn't. It's still the cowlick is when it sticks up at the front. So I need a lot of weight on the front in order for it. See how it kind of like. It's still kind of like if it was any shorter, it would stick up.
Gotcha. Okay.
Anyway, so I was blessed with funny hair. Yeah. So
I used to have kind of similar hair to that. My stance is I might offend some people. Every guy is doing the short sides, long top, and like it's basic. I'm so done with that. We've been doing that for way too long. So I'm going long. I'm doing something new.
Yeah, a while ago when I went to Iceland, it was the campaign time. Was it 2018? 2018, I had long hair. I had really long hair. You can see it in my passport photo when I slicked it back.
I think you always had short sides, but you did have a long top.
No, I had long top the whole thing. Everything was long. I don't know if you remember that.
Even your sides? I vaguely remember.
Yeah, I just grew it all out.
Okay.
Because my favorite photographer is Peter McKinnon, and he had really long hair, and I was like, I'll just try really long hair. I didn't go that long, but
I remember the long top. It was the man bun, and then it was the fade. There's a lot of variations of a fade, I guess. A lot of variations of long hair.
Yeah.
It's starting to get basic, though. It's starting to get played out.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. That is true. Everybody does have this haircut.
Short sides, long top.
Yeah.
In some variation or another.
All of our friends except for you have that.
Yeah, a lot of them do. And it looks different with different hair types.
It does.
Curly hair, straight hair.
It does.
Some people do really look great with it, but some people I think just kind of force it because everybody else has it.
Yeah. So guys, I officially gave up on the hard 75.
You told me you replaced it with something.
Yes, I have. So hard 75 is just not. It's not an attainable goal. And when you're doing these kinds of things, it's important that your goal is attainable.
So true.
And I love to run, and so I was with my friend Connor last week. I think I called him. I was like, dude, we need to start running again. Like, you don't have a marathon to train for this fall. Like, we should get into something. And so we came up, of course it rhymes, 5K every other day. So we started it on Friday, and we did the 5K. We did 5K this morning because today is Monday. And I actually ran an extra 2 because I had to go do an errand, and I just ran.
Right.
Anyway, so it's going really well, and I'm feeling a lot of the benefits.
Good.
When I'm exercised, man, my brain just hits another level. Mm-hmm. So like if you guys, I'm not gonna give any tips, but like
it's the endorphins.
Move your friggin' body.
I agree though. I think there's something to say about like you need to build trust in yourself, and if you tell yourself you're gonna do something and you don't do it, you break away a little bit of that trust.
Yeah.
And I think it's so good to start with small goals and prove to yourself that you can accomplish things before you take on something bigger. Because if you have this track record of having these huge expectations and then falling through, you lose confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people say there's something to be said psychologically about making your bed in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like functionally, who really cares about making a bed?
Yep.
But it's just getting that small little victory and starting the day.
Yep.
Like I know they're really rigorous about bed making in the military, for example. And it's not because for matters of national defense you have to have a neat bed. It's just like establishing that standard of we say we're going to do things and we have like an excellent track record.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Yeah.
And it's not like you can't add to it later.
Exactly. So we're starting at, I wanted to do
That's a lot already.
I wanted to do 5K every day. Right. Connor toned it down. He said, "Listen,
we
need
that you can do it
exactly,
and then do it."
Exactly. So we're doing 5K every other day.
Good for you guys.
Yeah. So that's fun. On to some news, guys.
Yes.
Google is extending their work from home. So all the Googies have been at home since all this hit, and it looks like they're going to be doing it until next summer.
Right. What do you think about that? So just some background. Google have, I think, probably the majority of their employees in Silicon Valley in California. They have offices around Ontario, around the U.S. They're everywhere. They've got about 200,000 staff, including everything from developers to the, people who make the food and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And they're sending everybody but essential.
Yep.
So the vast majority of, the professional workforce to work from home until 2021. at least.
Yeah.
What do you think?
They're going to be saving a lot of money on, I don't know if they lease, I'm sure they do lease office space somewhere, but
I have no idea.
That's crazy. And you know what? I bet you they're finding that a lot of people are more productive at home. Like you even said you're more productive at home too.
Yeah.
So I think that it's a win.
Yeah. I don't know. I personally find myself to be productive at home, but I know some people are the opposite.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a case-by-case basis. You know, there's certain things that we can't do at home.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Certain things that are way more beneficial to be done in groups or in teams. One thing that I think it really helps is it establishes some kind of sense of like permanence.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because especially thinking back to March, how we felt when everything was first unraveling, there was this sense of what do I do next?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
We were always questioning, is this temporary? You know, before we were throwing around the term the new normal.
Yep.
It just felt very, very like circumstantial and very temporary. So I think telling people, hey, you know that this is at least going to be going on for the foreseeable future until summer 21. Maybe it gives people a chance to kind of exhale a bit.
Yeah.
And realize, okay, maybe I'm going to be working home.
It gives them an answer.
It gives them an answer.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to focus and get into like a deep productive state if you don't really know what you're gonna do. Like if you're expecting a phone call in the next 15 minutes, I can't do anything in that 15 minutes.
Really?
Because I'm just expecting the phone call. Huh. You know, like I find it hard to get into like a deep flow.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. So on a longer scale, I think it helps just to tell people, you know, this is how it's gonna be.
Yeah.
I know Mark Zuckerberg said that he foresees less than half of his workforce coming back to the office in the next 10 years even.
Yeah.
So some of these companies are like really drastically thinking about changing how they're going to do things.
Yeah.
I know. Should we tend to
that? She just texted me and asked what the code was.
Somebody's trying to get into our...
Somebody's trying to break into our
office.
To our office.
I don't know if you guys can hear that. I think we've solved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so different companies are taking it differently. I saw this statistic from a corporate real estate company in New York that said less than 8% have currently come back to the office.
Wow.
Now, bear in mind, New York City is like an exemplary situation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're going to have to be a lot more hesitant to bring people back in than, say, somewhere in the Midwest where cases aren't as rampant or it's not so dense.
Yeah.
In population, but I was surprised even to hear that number, like less than 8%.
I thought there'd be way more back to work by now.
That's tiny. Well, you know, we live in rural Ontario.
No, I know, but even in Canada, it feels like more people are back to work as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
But is that in the U.S.?
That's in New York.
That's in New York.
Yeah, New York City.
Okay.
So obviously, people have returned in greater numbers elsewhere.
Yeah.
But in a major area like that where it's dense and they had a case problem, less than 8%.
Yeah.
I would have maybe ventured to say like 15 or 20%.
Yeah.
But that is a small number. So, yeah, I think a lot of businesses are reevaluating.
Dude, if you own commercial real estate right now.
A lot of businesses are reevaluating their relationship with corporate real estate because it's very expensive.
Yeah.
And if you're maybe making like a 10% productivity trade-off for saving some huge operating costs, if you're paying for Manhattan real estate and you have Google-level employees, forget about it.
Hundreds of thousands, if not millions a month. Yeah.
I know.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So it's a problem. You know what? Because companies like Google, they want to attract top talent.
Yeah. And
generally top talent demand high compensation and they want a good quality of life. And usually these people like to have a lot of say in where they live.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they want to relocate, they want to live somewhere cool.
Yeah.
Like for example, I know Microsoft is currently headquartered in Mississauga, which is a common trend for businesses who don't want to have to swallow that big Toronto real estate premium. So a lot of businesses set up their headquarters in Mississauga. Microsoft is now in like a multi-year plan to move their headquarters to downtown and buy a big tower. I'm not sure how COVID affected this, but this has been a plan for the past 2 or 3 years or so. Because the fact of the matter is that Microsoft wants to attract the top talent in the country, and they're going to be more open to working in a city like Toronto than they are to like a B city. No offense to Mississauga. I love Mississauga, but it's a B city compared to a place like Toronto. Yeah. So you're almost forced to go to the cool, more expensive metro center.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if Microsoft's rethinking all that right now.
Now, I don't know. I think all these companies, like as a broad trend, are really being forced to think about remote work and the benefit of having that real estate.
Yeah.
And how much they really need.
Yeah.
Maybe you keep the executives at the office, and maybe, Google has 200,000. Maybe 10,000 of them stay.
Yeah.
Or something like that. That would save, billions over time.
For sure.
And we see the beneficiaries of this shift being the Zooms and all these corporate products and all these like team sharing products and video conferencing products and social media and people who are buying more tech.
Yeah.
All these tech companies are doing fantastic right now, and it's no wonder why.
Yeah. We're just going through such a major shift right now, and you can feel it.
And this is accelerating everything.
Yeah.
We were transitioning to remote work being more accessible, and then we were just hit all at once with this ban.
This was that push.
Now it's more of a necessity than something that you can kind of plan for the future.
Yeah.
And we're seeing which businesses are in a position to make the transition gracefully and which ones are really getting upheaved by this. Some are doing a lot better than others.
For sure. There's a lot of I've heard that almost half of some crazy statistic, and I don't know if it's true, but half of Toronto's restaurants are closing.
I heard 80% of statistics are wrong. I'm just kidding.
No, but it could be wrong.
Yeah.
I can't even recall where but
no.
Even I asked my friend Alex, who lives downtown.
Right.
And he said he thousands have closed already. Thousands of restaurants and stuff. And it's because they have that cash flow thing. They need to be open in order to make the money to pay their crazy rent that they have.
Right.
And it's crazy.
It's similar to the airline industry, which has such a massive overhead cost, where I think the big firms burn about $80 million a day, regardless of whether or not they're doing airfare.
It's a lot of money.
Right, it's a lot of money. And the restaurants are the same way.
Yep.
I think if you want to break into the restaurant and food and bev space, you better love it.
Yeah.
Because it's so cutthroat and it's so hard to make money. You know?
The margins are razor thin.
Yeah. The overhead is phenomenally high.
Yeah.
And I think you just hear so much negativity from all levels of it.
Mm-hmm.
I know people who work as servers and bartenders and whatnot, and they're usually not pleased with management. They usually are of the opinion that they're underpaid, and they probably are. Yep. And they rely on tips, which I think is a fundamentally backwards compensation structure in and of itself. People who run restaurants, have to work hands-on, super long hours just to make ends meet. Mm-hmm. I know some restaurant owners who it's a struggle just to stay open in good times. Yeah. Right. And then we look at the delivery service, and we look at Uber Eats and DoorDash and whatnot. Yeah. And those margins are razor thin as well. Yeah. And a lot of people argue that labor is exploitative, which maybe it is. And there are so few winners in this huge industry that we all love and we all rely on. Yeah. So it just begs the question, how sustainable is this? Because it seems like everybody is losing.
The franchise model is one that obviously for restaurants where they make a little more money. Right. But sure, that's a volume game, and not every single little restaurant can start a chain, right? Yeah. But yeah.
And it's tough because even in the case of a franchise, they're usually run more efficiently, so it's smoother for the franchisees. They have all the systems operators. Right, because I know at McDonald's, they basically choreograph how the employees move, and they set up the kitchen in such a way that there's no time wasted. Yep. No movements are wasted. Yep. The fries are strategically placed adjacent to the burgers or whatever else, because it's down to a science. Mm-hmm. And small businesses don't have the infrastructure and the resources to study every single decision and make sure the business is running at peak performance. Yeah. But even with franchises, as an end consumer, if I want to order French fries from McDonald's, maybe it costs $3 and the delivery fee is $5, and then tax, maybe you add $1, and then you add a tip, and maybe they add a premium on top of the price just because you're ordering from a third-party service. and it ends up being like a $10 cost, maybe a $6-7 premium on a $3 item.
I've used Skip the Dishes like once or twice in my last year of university.
Sure.
And it's strictly because I was paying, I think I maybe ordered a Big Mac one time or something.
Okay.
And that Big Mac was like $30-something. Big Mac doesn't have to be $30.
Okay, that can't be true.
Dude, it was wild.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's crazy. I don't want to pay.
Like
I don't want to pay that much.
Yeah, like a $15 meal turns to $28.
Yeah.
And you could argue that the consumers are some of the smallest losers in that whole transaction, because the delivery drivers aren't happy. The franchise owners probably aren't happy about it.
Yeah.
The workers feel like they're underpaid.
Yeah.
It's like, what a damaged industry.
Yeah.
You know.
But shout out to all the passionate restaurateurs out there
If you love it,
that
you
love what
it.
they're doing. Yeah.
Right. And if you're the type of person where you couldn't imagine yourself doing anything else, then what choice do you have?
Exactly.
Right? You got to follow your passion.
Exactly.
And there are winners in the business. I'm being overly pessimistic.
Yeah.
Just very cutthroat.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a get rich quick scheme
No.
by any means.
No. Dude, we got a protest going on down the road.
Yeah. So I was driving downtown, and I had never seen this before. I think I saw in the news maybe a couple months ago there was an anti-mask protest, and I think that's before they were made mandatory in our community by a law, I believe. Mm-hmm. Now masks are mandatory, as they are just about everywhere else in public places. And driving down King Street, there was a protest. There was about, maybe, you saw it too, how many, maybe 25, 30 people?
25, 30.
Right. Holding up signs, protesting the mandatory mask bylaw. So what do you think?
Here we go.
We have touched on this before.
We talked about this. We talked about this also before the podcast too. So here's my thing, and I echo this from you. Who has the time to go do this? Number one. Number two, I empathize with them. I get why they're doing it, but like I said, and I've said this before on the podcast, the masks are for the greater good. Throw it on. Let's knock these numbers down. Let's get a vaccine. Let's kill the virus. Take the masks off. You know, it's a little bit of pain, or a little, if you get pain from this, I don't know if it really pains you so badly to throw a mask on while you go to Walmart and get toilet paper. Like,
I know.
Anyway, that's where I stand.
Yeah, that's interesting, because maybe there are some people who are just genuinely concerned for the slow push taking away more and more of their freedom.
And I empathize with that. I get that.
Right.
I don't want my rights taken away.
Right, nor do I.
But we have to do this for the greater good.
Yeah. Actually, last night I read an interesting article, I think, in The Atlantic about coronavirus and cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance is basically this psychological principle where there's a separation or a dissonance between how you behave and what you know to be true. So a common example would be people who smoke cigarettes.
Yep.
Your behavior is that you smoke, and you probably smoke a lot, but deep down you know pretty objectively that smoking is terrible for you and it's likely going to kill you.
Yeah.
So there's this separation between what you believe and how you act. Kind of like with coronavirus, you know that going out unnecessarily and meeting with people and hanging out and going to parties and whatnot is objectively going to be more likely that you're going to spread a virus than if you were just to stay home and not do that or not wear a mask. And it talked about kind of like these mental gymnastics that we do to justify why we're behaving in a certain way, because we don't want to admit that we're behaving irrationally or behaving against what we know to be true. Like you might say, oh, I smoke because it helps me concentrate, or I smoke because it helps me stay thin, and being overweight is a health risk too, so you can't win. Right? And it's just this interesting game that we play with ourselves to kind of rationalize what we do.
We all do it.
Yeah, we all do it.
Yeah.
So there's some interesting studies behind that, but I think it's so interesting how, like, once you're of the belief that something is true, then you make all these like subsequent decisions going forward that are all based on this one premise that may or may not be right, that you agreed on in the past. You're just going to go to these great lengths to keep justifying what you're doing and refusing to admit that your first decision might have been wrong. And we're all guilty of it in many different ways.
Humans are funny.
Yeah. It's very interesting to see how that plays into the way people behave and in the midst of a pandemic, and I'm not perfect.
No, nobody is.
Yeah.
I do wonder how, last I checked, I think locally the case numbers are at like 1 active case right now.
I'm not sure. I don't follow.
It's pretty low.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder what the back to school thing's going to be. I think the high school kids are back to school now.
I saw some kids at the Pines. I drove by today.
Cool. Neat.
Saw the kids in the uniforms.
Yeah.
We used to call the shirts the potato sacks.
Yeah.
Because they were like these rough.
They were not comfy.
Polos, yeah.
They weren't comfy. No.
Those were the days, though.
Yeah. Dude, we got on here that TikTok might be acquiring... Oracle might be acquiring TikTok.
Yeah. It's interesting. Just one more thing on the cognitive dissonance bit.
We're going back.
We hear people saying things like, people are literally dying because of the masks.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you know that masks restrict breathing? Don't you know that masks harbor the virus? Don't you know that masks aren't effective?
Yeah.
And it's all these kind of like fringe justifications to convince yourself that you're not being irrational. Yeah. Because everybody wants to believe that they're a smart and rational and empathetic person and they would never do anything wrong. Yep. So we do these crazy things to convince.
I had to go to a funeral over the weekend and I had to wear a mask the whole time.
Right.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
But I do it.
And bear in mind, you and I come from a position of privilege where we don't have to wear masks for 8 hours a day at our jobs.
It's true.
Right. There are people like your wife who wear layers of PPE. Yeah. And does Sarah complain about something like that?
Sometimes.
I mean,
not as much as I would.
Listen, I would complain about it, but does she ever question if what she's doing is against the greater good?
No.
No, of course not. No. That's another part of the argument is when you're trying to convince somebody to change their opinion, it's very tempting to come at them with the what are you thinking approach. Yeah. But as soon as you imply that somebody is stupid for their belief or their decision, they're going to double down and get defensive. So you have to tread very carefully when talking to these anti-mask people. Yeah. What
do you think? Like, if you could go and say something to those people over there, what would you say to them?
I don't know. That's so tough. I think you'd have to be really calculated in what you say. Mm-hmm. Because we were talking about this before when it came to the vaccine and how some marketing companies are being contracted to come up with marketing plans to encourage people to take the vaccine when such a time comes. Yeah. And there are different approaches you can take. You can embarrass people or shame them into doing it.
Can scare.
Right. You can talk about like economic incentives of how everybody wants to go back to work and go back to business. There's different approaches you can take. Like, for example, Health Canada with COVID, I see a lot of their advertising is like guilt focused. There's one ad where a kid goes to a party.
Yep, I got that one.
He infects himself, and then he goes back and he's sharing a bag of chips with his mom, and then his mom gets infected, and it's supposed to guilt you into asking yourself, is the party really worth it?
Yeah,
that's one approach.
I've been getting a lot of ads from Health Canada. It's like the young dude that comes on and says, I'm 20 years old and I thought I couldn't get COVID.
Right, because you're the demographic. Yeah. So I don't know how I'd approach a group like that. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Nope.
Like, you don't really know their justification. You don't know what they believe, what they know to be true. It's so tough. I think the last thing you want to do is say, what are you thinking? Don't you know how stupid you're being?
Yeah.
Because then they're just going to recoil and probably get even more stubborn about what they believe.
I'd want to talk to them.
Yeah, you want to try to empathize with why they think
I just want to hear them out.
To the extent that you can. Because I don't know how people like that think.
No.
I'm not really surrounded by anybody of that belief, so I don't know.
Maybe we should do an Exordia mini doc and just run over there and go be like...
Take some polls?
Take some polls. Yeah. What's going on? Why are you here? What brings you here today? Anyway, crazy.
Put a mask on the microphone or something.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah.
TikTok.
So shout out to the protesters. TikTok, Oracle, big deal. Bye-bye.
Right.
Is Oracle like a data company? What are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they make enterprise software.
Okay.
They do like data storage and information systems.
Okay.
Typically for big businesses.
Okay.
So they're not consumer facing the way that Microsoft is.
Yeah.
I know Microsoft does some enterprise software as well. They actually do a lot. But anyway, last we talked, TikTok was in talks of being acquired by Microsoft.
Yeah.
And the situation has evolved quite a bit since then. So, first of all, just today, or maybe late last night, I think, it was made public that ByteDance, the owner of TikTok, Chinese big tech company, turned down Microsoft's bid. So Microsoft...
Is that public, what they bid?
No. Just that they bid, not the figure. So Microsoft was, prior to yesterday or this morning, the forerunner in this fight for who's going to get to acquire TikTok, or at least be the U.S. tech partner. And we were also talking last week about how Walmart is considering joining on.
Mm-hmm.
And Walmart was going to, in some capacity, partner up with Microsoft. So it was going to be a Walmart, Microsoft, TikTok acquisition. There's now talk that Walmart has jumped over to Oracle. And Walmart now wants to partner with Oracle.
Interesting.
Right. So basically what happened is, just to give you some background, there are concerns that TikTok, which is owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese company, and as a Chinese company, the Chinese government is able to pull data from TikTok. TikTok stores a lot of data on international citizens, including U.S. citizens. The U.S. thinks this is a security threat. They've said, we're going to ban TikTok if they can't find an American suitor to buy the company by September 15th. That happened maybe a month and a half ago or something like that. So a few American companies, Twitter, Microsoft, Oracle, have been in talks with ByteDance to try to acquire TikTok. Most of us believed that it was Microsoft who was in the lead, who was going to get to do the acquisition. Just as of last night, we think it's now Oracle, which is interesting because one of the founders of Oracle, Larry Ellison, is an avid Trump supporter and Republican who has done public fundraising for Trump. And that's kind of a unicorn in the tech space because a lot of these tech leaders are certainly not vocal about their support for Trump. So Larry is an outlier in that regard, and you can see maybe why Trump would be more down with an Oracle acquisition versus a Microsoft acquisition.
Especially right around an election.
Now, before this Oracle thing happened, TikTok actually sued the Trump administration. I don't know if you heard about that, but TikTok sued the Trump administration because they claimed that the government, by rushing the sale, was was impeding on their right to due process, is what it's called, which basically just means a reasonable amount of time to come up with a transaction that both parties are happy with. Because obviously by putting a deadline on it, that gives the U.S. a lot of leverage over the Chinese company, right? TikTok is a very valuable product. Yeah. ByteDance understands that. And by TikTok rushing it, that gives Microsoft or Oracle or whoever the acquirer is a lot of leverage in that deal and a lot of say. Yeah. Because TikTok risks getting banned if they don't concede to what the U.S. wants. Yeah. So there was the lawsuit. And then the Chinese government, also in the meantime, has gone and said that they would rather see the app banned than set the precedent where the U.S. can dictate what happens to these huge Chinese companies.
Yeah, so that's interesting because here's the thing. The U.S. marketplace is obviously large in comparison to Canada. Right. But the U.S. market is not as large, like when it comes to social media and stuff. Like looking at China, looking at India, like all these other countries. Right. The thing is that if the U.S. bans TikTok, who's going to follow? Who is the U.S. going to make follow that? Yeah. Right? Like that's the issue.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. So now people are saying TikTok is saying that they'd rather just have it banned instead of have Oracle buy it?
The Chinese government is saying.
Okay. So TikTok.
Well, TikTok is the one that sued.
Yeah.
TikTok said, you're not giving us due process. You're not allowing us to make a fair transaction. Yeah. And the Chinese government said, we don't want to establish a precedent where the U.S. can bully us into selling our valuable tech stuff. Right? Because, what you say is true. The U.S. is 300 million relatively high income. It's a very valuable market, but there are 8 billion people in this world.
Exactly.
Right? So China has the leverage to push back a little bit. Yeah. So even though Trump is very happy with the Oracle deal, because he and Larry Ellison are publicly on good terms, that's not necessarily a guarantee that this is going to go through.
No.
And also the U.S. government has said that they want the acquisition to give the U.S. company a controlling stake, which is like 51% or greater ownership.
Yep.
Whereas the Chinese government is rallying for what they call a tech partnership with the U.S., which is the relationship that Oracle would have. So they wouldn't necessarily have a controlling stake. They'd have some kind of a tech partnership, which would allow ByteDance to remain in control of it. So whether or not these two parties can come to an agreement is still up for debate. We don't know. Yeah. All we know is that currently the forerunner is Oracle, which is this enterprise data company, which has a history of dealing with data.
Are they publicly traded?
I believe so, yeah. Yeah. And another part of this, as we talked about before, is TikTok has said they're not going to sell the source code, which is their secret sauce, right? Which is the algorithm that makes it so valuable.
Exactly.
So it's really, really complex logistical process of who gets what and what a tech partner really means and what that constitutes and whether Trump is going to decide that that's fair or that that's still a security threat or not.
Yeah.
I think we may end up seeing a stalemate personally.
Yeah.
I think we may end up seeing a complete withdrawal from the deal. And if TikTok gets banned in the short term, then that might be a loss that the Chinese government is willing to take. Because the Chinese government, what makes them so powerful is they play the long game. They play the 100-year game.
100%.
And they're not going to get bullied into a situation like this.
And the biggest thing is that if the U.S. makes other countries also ban TikTok, or they somehow weasel their way, somehow they could do that, I'm sure. But
well, they might be able to influence those countries.
Yeah.
Into doing so.
Yeah. Anyway,
it'll be interesting to see what happens in Canada.
Yeah, excited to see that play out.
And that deadline is fast approaching.
That's tomorrow,
right? The litigation is going on still.
Yeah. So tomorrow they have to figure their shit out.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, just as of yesterday, it was found that the Microsoft bid was declined. So, they're leaving things right to the last minute.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to get solved in time.
Yeah.
We might see the app banned in the interim, which would be really interesting. If you asked me 6 months ago if Fortnite would ever be banned, I would probably say no. But look where we're at there.
2020 is nuts.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane.
Do we want to get into this last one? We're over 30 minutes.
We could, sure.
All right.
How long do we usually record for?
About 30 minutes. That's our average.
Okay.
We can go for a long one if you want.
Let's go into it.
All right. So, you guys might know Tiffany.
Tiffany.
I'm not talking about a female. I'm talking about the company. They are suing LVMH, and Jared's going to talk a little bit about what LVMH is.
Right. So this ties into the last story because we're seeing, in terms of trade and the global economy, there's this America versus everybody narrative that seems to be really strong this year. And this tension between ByteDance and the Trump administration is just one manifestation of that. And this is another one. So LVMH, which stands for Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, is this big luxury conglomerate brand based in France, owned by Bernard Arnault, top 10 richest men in the world, considered to be the most powerful man in France. So to say that he's well connected would be an understatement.
He's got over 500 LinkedIn connections.
Sure. And remember that because that's relevant once we get into this story, how well connected he is to French government officials and whatnot. So before COVID, which feels like a decade ago, but was actually earlier this year, LVMH, as the luxury conglomerate that they are, had plans of acquiring Tiffany, which is an American diamond and jewelry company. So we have a French luxury conglomerate looking to buy an American luxury company. And by the way, in the luxury space, a lot of these big brands are owned by a small handful of conglomerates, namely LVMH. There's another company called Kering that owns the big brands of the world. So the Louis Vuittons, the Gucci's, etc., they're all owned by these big parent companies. And that's how Bernard Arnault has amassed all of his wealth and whatnot. So they're looking to add another one under their umbrella, Tiffany, which, unlike a lot of luxury companies which are acquired, are not European, they're American. So before COVID, they were in negotiations of acquiring Tiffany, and I think they were around the mark of acquiring for about $135 per share, as Tiffany is a publicly traded company, as is Oracle. And that was right around the market value. That's right around what they were trading at the time, around a $15 billion valuation.
They wanted to buy it outright.
Yes.
Okay.
So LVMH wanted to acquire
the whole
Tiffany into their umbrella of luxury brands like Louis Vuitton and whatever else for around $16 billion, which would reflect a market value of about $135 per share. That's what Tiffany was trading at the time. And then COVID happened. And like many other industries, the luxury industry was hit hard, and Tiffany stock fell, and the company lost a lot of value in a few short months. So as LVMH, who's trying to set a fair price for buying Tiffany, and then all of a sudden their value gets reduced, they're going to want to retract what they said about the $130 per share. Because I think today they're trading closer to $110 per share. So that's almost a 20% loss in value.
Yep.
So LVMH, Bernard Arnault, is a pretty fierce man, right? He's going to want to negotiate what he thinks is a fair contract.
Yep. So
now, because of what happened, nobody anticipated the pandemic. He's getting cold feet on the deal, essentially.
Oh wait, did he not make the deal? Did he not offer the deal for 20% less, or did he try to?
No. So LVMH was talking about buying it around $130 per share.
Yeah.
And then the stock plummeted.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to extend the negotiation.
Okay.
And they're basically getting cold feet and trying to find a way to retract what they said about the $130. Okay. Because now the company's worth much less.
Yes.
So they want to get a better deal.
Yeah. It's on sale.
Obviously, Tiffany's not happy about this.
Yeah.
Right. So this has been going on since January. And they've been kind of buying time, trying to find a way to take back part of the agreement or however it may be. And just a couple weeks ago, LVMH put out this statement where somebody in the French government, I think the trade minister, basically sent them direction to cancel the deal because the U.S. is putting tariffs on a lot of French products, including luxury goods. So that's going to change the way that the trade dynamics work between the U.S. and France. And it speaks to this broader conversation of this U.S. versus everybody mentality, where the U.S. is imposing all these tariffs on foreign imports to champion domestic production, which you could argue is maybe good or bad, and it's a very complex thing. But anyway, it complicates buying luxury goods in America. If you want to buy Louis Vuitton as an American, then you might have to pay an extra premium to compensate for this tariff. So LVMH is saying, look, our hands are tied. We can't do the deal anymore. Our trade minister here has told us that we can't because of the impending trade tariffs. We've got to wait it out and see what happens before we make a deal. And Tiffany sued them at this point, saying there's no French law that would give you the right to retract your agreement. You've just got cold feet because of COVID, because our stock price was lowered, and now you want to find a way to get out of the deal. Because they might have to take a 20% hit if this deal is forced to go through. Wow. And they're using the tariffs as kind of a guise to hide behind and say, no, we're not buying because of the tariffs. The government says we can't buy you. Sorry. Even though it'd be a very opportune time to take back the deal because the deal has changed a lot. Yeah. And it's now a much worse deal for LVMH.
So, I don't know if you know this or not, but did LVMH approach Tiffany, or did Tiffany say, hey, we're looking to sell?
I'm not sure. I think Tiffany has been losing market share for quite a while.
There's a lot of jewelry brands out there that are.
Yeah, and they're just such an outlier in that LVMH is no stranger to acquiring luxury companies. They do so all the time, except they're typically not American. Yeah. Tiffany is one of the few really prominent American luxury companies, besides maybe a couple of the car companies. Yeah. And that's a totally different, totally separate industry. Yeah. What's interesting is Tiffany's flagship store, their big, huge Manhattan biggest store, is in Trump Tower, which is kind of interesting. Maybe Trump has some vested interest in them as an American luxury brand, and now he's considering imposing these tariffs, which hit the luxury industry particularly hard. Yeah, that's crazy, man. And by the way, that's one of France's biggest exports, is the luxury industry.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, a lot of the big luxury brands come out of there.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Similar situation to Italy. Yeah. They do cars and handbags. For the
I've got some interesting news to watch now. follow.
Yeah. So that's kind of the theme that I'm starting to notice. It's this US versus everybody kind of narrative. And we're seeing a lot of pushback and all this progress we've made as a globalized economy. It seems like we're kind of reeling that in and focusing on being
Local.
more self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Right. I think the availability of masks at the starting of COVID
Really, and PPE
really,
in general.
Yeah, really illustrated to people how dependent we are on foreign powers and
Yeah.
whether that's a good thing going forward or not.
I feel like globalization is a good thing for some things, but in other things we need to be self-sufficient.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's tough.
When
There's a
there are
balance.
two powers to be,
Yeah.
who are kind of rallying for pole position of who gets to be the leader of the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's bound to be some tension there.
Yeah.
Right?
So I don't know. You go on Instagram, but you don't necessarily have like a personal Instagram.
I spend enough time on it.
I follow Joe Rogan on Instagram, and today he put up a thing. Donald Trump is willing to have Joe Rogan moderate
the Trump-Biden
debate. That is awesome.
Yeah, I saw that.
As a fan of Rogan, that would be cool.
I actually just saw it on Instagram too.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think you could argue that Rogan is probably conservative Republican leaning based on his ideology, which might give him an unfair advantage. But is there such thing as a truly bipartisan moderator?
No, because every other moderator is not that.
Yeah.
Well, like it depends on which network you're watching it depends.
But as if
there's no such thing as bipartisan and being unbiased.
Right, I completely agree. I think that's the problem of like the polarization of the two sides. Oh, you're right wing.
Yeah.
Oh, you're left wing.
Yeah.
As if it's not some incredibly complex spectrum where people could fall on any part of.
Yeah.
And that's part of, why America is so divisive right now.
Yeah.
There's so much separation.
You're red or you're blue.
Yeah. But as if 2020 couldn't get any more ridiculous, this circus of a year is, of course, an election year. Yeah. Right? Of course it had to be an election year.
Yeah.
So this is going to be like the grand finale to...
Yeah. I'm excited to watch any of the debates, even if Rogan is moderating or not. I tuned into the last ones in the 2016 election. Every single one. It was interesting.
That seems like a million years ago.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the podcast. If you guys do follow the podcast, you'll know that last week's podcast still isn't out, but now it is. So go give that one a listen to. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Peace.